questions that we need to get some clarity on and some advice to. So we're going to move on, and we're going to go to agenda item number 8. Just for clarity in addressing the school committee, who I know has asked me on a number of occasions, how did this get on the agenda and what is it doing here? I received requests from a couple of parents who were looking to present to the school committee and let us be informed of some issues they have with things that have taken place in the school district. At that time, I gave them an option of either coming and speaking in public comment or being an agenda item, and I did a little bit of discussion with them on the difference, most notably that in public comment there wouldn't really be any interaction and discussion with any member of the school committee. If they were looking to have any interaction and discussion with someone else, that it needed to be an agenda item, and if it was an agenda item, then the staff that they would be looking to discuss would need to be informed so that they could be here and have representation while they're here. And there are certain rights and protections that they are entitled to as well. What happened subsequent to that is it was put on the agenda, and we began to receive some correspondence from attorneys and union representation of staff members that were listed, whose names were given to me for purposes of notification. And those representatives had asked that the matter be put off to another meeting. They did it for pretty much the same reason, in essence, so that they could, one actually couldn't be here, or two actually couldn't be here, and the ones who are here were looking for some adequate time to be able to prepare and represent their clients going forward. So when I received those, I sent an email, or I had our secretary send an email to the parents that had contacted me initially to let them know that those requests came in and that I was looking to know if they would be willing to voluntarily continue their agenda item. So, and if that was the case, then I would just remove it from today's agenda and put it on the agenda for November 12th. If not, then I was going to simply open the discussion up to the school committee and let the school committee as a body decide if they wanted to grant the requests of the representatives of our staff members, or they wanted to continue to go forward today. The response that I really didn't get a response other than to know that they wanted to be here, because nobody voluntarily said, we'll agree to continue. So this matter is still on our agenda, and I'm looking for the school committee's view, or looking for a discussion here on whether or not you're looking to honor the requests of the representatives of our staff members and postpone this. Now, I'm going to make a different comment before we even get there. Regardless of whether we go forward on the agenda item or not, anyone that's here has the right to speak in public comment, subject to the rules that we have in our policy for public comment, and I will get into those before I get into the stack of people who've asked to speak in public comment. But for right now, I want to address the agenda item and the parent request.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I move that we continue item 8 until November 12th, when all parties can be here and address it in executive session.
There's been a motion by Mrs. McBride to continue. Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Second by Mr. O'Dell for discussion. So any comments or questions? Anyone want to?
Sure. This is a difficult issue for me. I've spent some time since learning that this was A, on the agenda, and B, potentially going to be continued over the objection of the parents who initially requested it on the agenda, to look into what our policies say about how these types of situations are supposed to be handled, and also to gather some greater understanding as to the ways in which these issues came to be placed in our agenda this evening and the facts and circumstances around how we came to be where we are today. And I think it's important that we understand that when we're approaching handling the sensitive nature of talking about the personnel and the employees that work for the school system, and also the important and really critical concerns that parents have related to the way that they interact with our school system and those employees, that we have lots of interests in, that we need to be sure that we're protecting and trying to balance as we think about the way that we approach these things. And as a school committee, we have policies around how, particularly parents and members of the public, when they have concerns about the way that our employees are performing or otherwise interacting with either themselves or their children, we're supposed to follow. And I read through these, and we have a policy that says, essentially, if there is a parent complaint about the actions of a school employee, that there's a process that it goes through that I think in many cases has been followed with respect to these complaints tonight, where it escalates from the teacher to the principal to the superintendent and then to the school committee. But then there's also a policy, it's policy KLD, that says any charges against school personnel for essentially misconduct in their duties are going to be, if requested by the parent making the complaint, brought before the school committee in executive session. And it's important to me as a school committee member to both be responsive and listen to the public, and also make sure that we are implementing our policies in an even-handed and appropriate manner. We're not making exceptions, but following those policies all the time. It isn't clear to me tonight what the parents who are on the agenda and want to be heard about the school committee intend to say, or what their goal is. I am inclined to allow the agenda item to move forward tonight with the understanding that as myself as a school committee member, I won't speak for anybody else, it would be my hope and expectation that the purpose of the discussion would be for the parents to inform us about generally what's going on, without speaking specifically about complaints about personnel performance, without making any requests for any action to be taken by the school committee in connection with it, but to be heard with an understanding that we as school committee members are really constrained by legal obligations and the need to protect the rights of everybody involved to not respond or discuss the performance of any of the school personnel, but that we can all honor and be respectful of what all of us, I think, hope to have, and that is an open dialogue between the public and the school committee that respects everybody's boundaries. So I will, at this point, I'm inclined to vote against the motion to continue with that.
Yes, Mr. Bradshaw.
So I'm going to echo a little bit of what Mr. Ramos just said. As a school committee member, as a parent in this district, I think we have an obligation to listen to the parents in this district and hear them and their grievances. At the same time, we have an obligation to our employees to follow our policies and to discuss their performance in executive session if they so choose. Like Mr. Ramos said, I am also going to vote against this motion to continue with the understanding that any discussion of performance or retribution or personnel issues I will not be responding to, but I would like to have that go into executive session per policy. Because I also agree that it is important that this district uphold the policies that we set. And if we start breaking those policies now, then it kind of all goes out the window. So I will vote against this motion to continue to listen. And hopefully, as Mr. Ramos said, we'll discuss the things that you just want to tell us and your concerns and the things that you've experienced that you're not happy with. But when we start talking about personnel performance, or if I get questions regarding personal performance, or this person should be fired, or this person should this, that, and the other thing, I will not respond to any of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the two comments that have just been, can I be heard? Can you hear me out there with this?
Yeah, we would love to hear from Diana.
The two previous comments, I would be very comfortable with on the heading of public comment. Because that, a person can stand up with certain restrictions, can state their position with the understanding that there will be no interaction and no dialogue.
Why can't anybody answer anything?
I'm sorry, somebody said something, I can't hear what you're saying.
Why can't anybody answer anything?
It's because during public comment, we can't respond to something that's not on the agenda. If this is taken off the agenda, okay, the motion passes that this is removed from the agenda. The next question is, where can you speak? You can still speak under public comment. But the difference is, since it's not an agenda item, we can't interact with you. Now,
Way to avoid having to interact with parents at once.
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing. I can't.
So in a sense, it's a way for you to avoid having to interact with parents who want to.
No. If I'm allowed to continue with my commentary.
Yes.
It will be made clear that I'm not trying to avoid, well, I'm trying to avoid something, yes I am. I'm trying to avoid somebody's rights being violated.
What about the kids' rights?
Let him finish, please.
Okay. What's really nice, I'm a strict constitutionalist. And what's nice about the Constitution, it protects the rights of a single individual. To the point that an individual can take a nation to court and win. That's the beauty of our Constitution. And you know, I'm a constitutionalist in that. If there's somebody here this evening, or somebody that's not here this evening, they have certain rights that need to be protected, even if it's just one person.
So these students...
And let him finish, please.
No.
Yes, this is a meeting that's taking place and it's discussion
This is
here.
about children.
Excuse
This is not
me.
about you speaking, this is about children. Let someone in...
Excuse me. It's not appropriate right now, and you can go like that, that's fine. But this is a meeting taking place, and Mr. Odell has the floor. Courtesy would be nice.
Yes, it would.
Okay, I'll back up a little bit. This committee hears all the time, and probably tired of hearing it, and I'm a process guy. I believe in a proper process. If you've got a good process that's taking place, I have no objection over that process, then you're going to get a good result. If I'm leery of the process, then I'm going to question the process. Because there's something wrong in the process from the beginning. I'm concerned about the result. I'm concerned about people's rights being violated. So there's a proper way to proceed. That's what I'm on about. A proper way to have a good process by which we can have a dialogue, have certain things take place, and have certain people's rights preserved. The way this is transpiring this evening, I've heard that there are certain people who want attorneys present, want their attorneys to be present. They have a right to have an attorney present if they're going to be spoken about. They have a right to that. And I feel I'm obligated to protect that person's rights.
How long is public comment? How long is this parent time?
3 minutes.
I would appreciate if the questions come through the chair. Just so we understand, this is a public meeting. okay? And for a public meeting to run correctly, it's not just speak at will. I'm checking to see if Mr. Odell is done. When he is done, I'll move to the next member of the school committee that has a comment to say, because that's the way a public meeting takes place. I don't imagine that any one of you would be in the floor of Congress screaming to a congressman when they're having a discussion. Okay? It's not allowed at the State House. It's not allowed here either. So I would appreciate if you would have a little courtesy. Otherwise, I'll let them all speak when you're speaking.
Can I just say?
Not right now, but that's okay.
Go
ahead.
It's just taking so long.
I guess I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments?
I have a comment. Is this working? So I agree with Bill that there should be a process. I'm uncomfortable that there are people here without representation. But the fact of the matter is that there are people here in the audience who have been placed on this agenda and are expecting to speak and be heard, and that, I want to say that as a parent, I understand that there's, when you're hurting for your child, that's the worst hurt in the world. I get that. I've felt that, and I just believe very strongly that people need to be heard. I also agree with Adam and Brian that I hope that if we move forward to not continue this, but to have those on this agenda be heard tonight, that you will be mindful that, we're all human beings. There are children involved. There are people involved on both sides, and that I do just strongly believe and urge everyone to use a level of respect for that.
Anyone else have any comment? Mrs. Saliano?
Yes, thank you. I think I've said probably both sides of what we're talking about, but I will be voting against Mrs. McBride's motion because I think that we have a lot of concerned, interested people here this evening, and if enough of us vote against it, then that means that we will then go for Adam's motion that I think he'll probably make. So I just wanted everyone to know where my position is at this point.
Yeah. One of the things that you do in debate is you make a motion, and that way you can debate what it is that you want to do with the issue. So the motion is made, and then everyone at this table has the opportunity, not once but twice, to comment on what they would like to see go forward. So I would hope that you all understand that that's exactly what a motion is. Having said that, I happen to agree with Mr. Odell. I am not a strict
Constitutional.
Yeah. But I believe that there are a lot of people in this room who care a lot about children and about other people's children and about what goes on in our schools, and I think that's critically important that they need to be heard. But I also think it's important that everybody in this room be represented appropriately, and they're not. And they were given due notice, and they were unable to come. And I think it's only fair that we give all of the people that opportunity. So for that reason, I ask that we continue it until November 12th. And the reason I did that is because then we can sit down in executive session if it's the request of the employee. And we can have the discussion and we can hear everything that it is we want to say. But if we don't, and you speak tonight, two things will happen. You will be limited. And I think that you need to be very, very careful about the rights of all individuals, particularly the students. and after the students, the staff. I'll also let you know that I am going to be voting yes on my motion, and if it fails, it fails, but I will not be a part of a discussion about individuals who go to school here, or who work here, or who live here, who are not appropriately represented tonight by counsel of their request. So that's how I stand, and thank you.
Move the motion, Mr. Chair.
I don't want to
We're not done with discussion yet, Mr. Saviano. Everyone has not had the opportunity.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like a clarifying question. It was stated earlier by someone in the discussion, I can't remember who it was, that the expectation of everyone here is that they will be able to speak. I think that that people were, I had told that about this request from the employees that they wanted counsel available and that counsel was not, and so they were told that this would come up as a vote, and there was a chance that the school committee would vote not to have the public, not to have, to continue this to November 12th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the reason for that, and so it's not that the expectation is that we definitely will speak, but I think people were also told that should this be continued to November 12th, they still had an opportunity to speak in public and could do so during through public comment. Is that correct?
If this were continued tonight to November 12th, if the agenda item is continued, I still have a list of public comments that would be allowed to speak, yes.
Okay. And but both situations, whether they speak as part of the agenda item or as in public comment, in both instances, they would be instructed, everybody would be instructed to be very careful not to include individuals' names, not to say specifics, not to, et cetera, et cetera. Is that correct?
Well, we have a policy, as noted by Mr. Ramos, that indicates that we give instructions to people who speak here that they're not to mention staff members by name or anything specific in that regard, students or anything of that nature when they're speaking about things that have taken place.
So I'm sorry to take so much time in asking these questions. By a yes vote again for Ms. McBride's motion to continue this is not actually cutting anyone from speaking in public or for having their say about the issues and the strong feelings that they have. Is that correct?
It doesn't prevent anyone from getting to the podium and speaking after filling out.
Okay, so the only difference is that the school committee, who have already stated, members of the school committee have already stated they will not respond to anything if it included references to staff or students or other things. So essentially, the interaction is already sort of somewhat limited in the agenda versus the public comment.
I can't make that. I listened to Mr. Bradshaw say that he wouldn't react or comment back. That may be one